Think about what happens when an individual goes bankrupt. They might lose their house, their car, and sometimes almost everything they own. When a company goes bankrupt, it can shut down entirely. Workers lose their jobs, assets are sold off, and the business may disappear. But what about a country? Governments around the world borrow enormous amounts of money. News headlines constantly talk about rising national debt. Yet even when the debt becomes massive, countries continue borrowing more. So what happens if a government can't repay what it owes? A country doesn't get evicted from its land. Its borders don't disappear. No court shuts the nation down. The country still exists, but something very important breaks. In this video, we'll explore what it really means when a country goes bankrupt, why governments fall into debt crises, what happens when they default, how some countries manage to recover, and whether even wealthy nations can face the same danger. Let's dive in. Section 1. What country bankruptcy really means. When people say a country has gone bankrupt, the correct economic term is sovereign default. A sovereign default happens when a government fails to make payments on its debt. That could mean missing an interest payment, delaying repayment, or refusing to pay lenders entirely. Unlike individuals or corporations, countries don't go through a legal bankruptcy process. There's no international court that liquidates a country's assets. No judge forces the government to sell buildings or vehicles. The nation itself continues to function. Citizens still go to work, businesses continue operating, political leaders remain in office. So what actually breaks? Trust. Investors and lenders lose confidence in the government's ability to repay its obligations. And once that confidence disappears, borrowing money becomes extremely difficult. Without access to credit, governments struggle to pay for essential imports, such as fuel, medicine, or food. In some extreme cases, countries may even hand over control of valuable infrastructure in order to manage debts. For example, Sri Lanka leased the Hambantota port to a Chinese company for 99 years after struggling to repay loans used to build the port. This situation involved a specific project rather than the entire national debt, but it shows how financial distress can force governments into difficult agreements. So when a country defaults, the nation itself doesn't collapse, but global confidence in its economy does. And once that confidence disappears, economic life becomes far more difficult. Section 2. Why countries default. Many people assume corruption or poor leadership is the main reason countries default. And while those factors can definitely contribute, they are only part of the story. Several different forces can push a country toward financial collapse. Excessive borrowing. The most common cause is simple. Governments borrow more money than they can realistically repay. At first, borrowing seems manageable. Loans help fund infrastructure, public services, and economic development. But debt comes with interest, and over time, interest payments begin to grow. Eventually, a government may find itself spending a large portion of its annual budget just paying interest on existing debt. This creates what economists call a debt trap. To keep up with payments, governments start borrowing new money simply to repay old loans. It becomes a cycle of borrowing to survive, and eventually, lenders stop offering new loans. When that happens, default becomes unavoidable. Currency collapse. Debt problems can become far worse when countries borrow in foreign currencies, especially US dollars. This is common because international lenders trust the dollar more than many local currencies. But it creates a dangerous situation. Governments collect taxes in their own currency, yet their debt payments must be made in dollars. If the local currency loses value, the government suddenly needs far more money to buy the same number of dollars. A falling currency can therefore turn manageable debt into an impossible burden. Economic shocks. Unexpected economic disasters can also trigger default. These shocks might include wars, pandemics, financial crises, or sudden collapses in export prices. Venezuela provides a clear example. The country relied heavily on oil exports for government income. When global oil prices dropped dramatically, government revenue collapsed. At the same time, corruption, sanctions, and poor economic management worsened the crisis. To cover the shortfall, the government began printing large amounts of money. This triggered hyperinflation and eventually led to sovereign default. Political instability. Politics can also play a role. Sometimes new governments refuse to honor debts taken by previous administrations. In 2008, Ecuador's President Rafael Correa declared a portion of the country's debt illegitimate and chose not to repay it. The country technically had the money to make payments, but political decisions led to a deliberate default. Section 4. What happens after default? When a government defaults, the consequences often begin quietly. Sometimes it starts with a missed payment or a request to delay repayment. But financial markets react quickly. Credit rating agencies downgrade the country's credit score. This is similar to a person's credit rating dropping after missing loan payments. Once a downgrade happens, investors become nervous. Many begin pulling their money out of the country. They sell government bonds. They sell stocks. They exchange local currency for safer foreign currencies. As investors rush to exit, the country's currency often falls sharply, and that creates another problem. Imports suddenly become much more expensive. Countries rely on foreign goods for many essential products, such as fuel, medicine, or food. These goods are usually priced in dollars. If the local currency weakens, the country must spend more money to buy the same number of dollars. This leads to rapid inflation. Prices rise quickly. Store shelves may become empty. Power shortages can appear. People become anxious about their savings. Some rush to withdraw cash from banks before their money loses more value. But banks typically do not have enough cash available to satisfy everyone at once. This creates a bank run. Banks may begin limiting withdrawals. Some may even freeze accounts entirely. If panic spreads, banks can collapse one after another. When the banking system weakens, businesses lose access to credit, companies shut down, factories stop operating, workers lose their jobs, and the broader economy begins to fall apart. Public frustration grows. Protests and social unrest can follow. That's why governments try extremely hard to avoid default, not because someone will physically seize the country, but because default can trigger a chain reaction that devastates the economy. Section 4. Can countries recover? Default does not always mean permanent failure. Some nations eventually rebuild their economies and regain investor trust, but recovery is rarely quick. After default, most countries lose access to international borrowing. Lenders become extremely cautious. Before lending again, they want proof that the country has fixed its financial problems. So governments usually begin by restructuring their debt. Debt restructuring means negotiating new terms with lenders. The country might ask for more time to repay, or request that lenders forgive part of the debt. This partial forgiveness is often called a haircut. Naturally, lenders dislike taking losses, but sometimes accepting a haircut is better than receiving nothing. Even after restructuring, countries still need money to stabilize their economies. This is where international organizations step in. Institutions like the International Monetary Fund, the World Bank, and groups like the Paris Club can provide emergency financial assistance. But these loans usually come with strict conditions. Governments may be required to reduce spending, raise taxes, or privatize state-owned assets. These policies are known as austerity measures. Austerity can be extremely unpopular. Government jobs may be cut, subsidies removed, public services reduced. Citizens often feel like their country is sacrificing economic independence. Even after reforms, rebuilding trust takes years. Countries must demonstrate financial discipline and political stability. Only then will investors slowly return. Some countries manage to do this successfully. Argentina has defaulted several times, but continues to access global markets. Greece endured years of painful reforms after its debt crisis. Sri Lanka began recovering after its 2022 default with help from the IMF. Uruguay is another notable example. After a severe financial crisis in 2002, triggered by problems in neighboring Argentina, Uruguay came close to default, but with international assistance, debt restructuring, and strong economic reforms, the economy stabilized. Today, Uruguay is considered one of the most stable economies in South America. So recovery is possible, but it requires discipline, time, and political stability. Section 5. Can rich countries default? If poorer countries can default, what about wealthy ones? Could the United States or other advanced economies face the same problem? Technically, yes, but the situation is very different. The United States borrows money primarily in US dollars. Since the US government controls the dollar, it can theoretically create more dollars to repay its debt. This gives the United States a unique advantage. However, printing too much money creates inflation. If too many dollars enter the economy,
their value can decline. So excessive money creation carries its own risks. The United States has actually come close to default in the past, though for political reasons. In 2011 and again in 2023, disagreements in Congress over raising the federal debt ceiling created fears that the government might miss debt payments. Although a deal was eventually reached each time, the uncertainty shook financial markets. Credit rating agencies even downgraded U.S. government debt. In 2011, Standard & Poor's lowered the U.S. credit rating from AAA to AA+. In 2023, Fitch issued another downgrade. These events showed that even the world's largest economy is not immune to political risks. Japan presents another interesting case. Japan's government debt exceeds 200% of its GDP, one of the highest ratios in the world. Yet Japan has not defaulted. Why? Because most of its debt is owned by Japanese investors and institutions. This reduces dependence on foreign lenders and lowers the risk of a sudden financial crisis. So while wealthy nations are less likely to default, they are not completely immune. Financial stability ultimately depends on economic strength, political stability, and investor confidence. Conclusion. A country cannot go bankrupt in the same way a person or company does. There's no court shutting it down, no foreclosure on national territory. The nation continues to exist. But when a government defaults, the consequences can still be severe. The real damage comes from the loss of trust. Investors withdraw their money, currencies weaken, imports become expensive, inflation accelerates, banks fail, jobs disappear, and ordinary citizens bear the greatest burden. That's why governments around the world work so hard to avoid default, because once trust in a country's financial system breaks, rebuilding it can take many years. If you enjoyed this explanation and want to learn more about how global economies work, consider subscribing and supporting the channel. Thanks for watching.